Góðan daginn og verið hjartanlega velkomin á þetta fræðsluerindi Nóbelsverðlaunin í bókmenntum 2018. Þetta erindi haldið á vegum Vísindafélags Íslands en það hefur frá 2013 staðið fyrir fræðsluerindum til almennings Nóbelsverðlaunin. Nú auk þess þá stendur Vísindafélagi einnig fyrir málþingum sem við kynnum á Facebook síðan okkar meðal annars, þannig að mér langar endilega benda ykkur á að láta ykkur líka við hana. Það Vísindafélag Íslands á Facebook. Í dag ætlum við að heyra hana Ewu Marcinek, pólska rithöfund, ræða Olgu Tokarczuk sem að fékk Nóbelsverðlaunin fyrir árið 2018. En eins og einhver okkar rekur minni til þá voru verðlaunin ekki afhent í fyrra vegna ýmissa hnillismála sem að áttu sér stað innan akademíunnar. The lecture will be in English, so I will be switching to English now. Ewa Marcinek, a Polish writer, has been so kind to give us a lecture on Olga Tokarczuk, the Polish Nobel Prize winner in literature for the year 2018. She has named her talk or her lecture, Olga Tokarczuk, The Maps of Reality. And I would like to invite you, Eva, to take the stage.
Thank you. It's a big pleasure to be here. I would like to thank to Vísindafélag for having me today, to Erna and Brynhildur for organizing the meeting. It's a real pleasure to be here. I have a special connection with Olga Tokarczuk through some of my interest, but also through location. I'm from Wrocław, from the Lower Silesia region in the southwest Poland, which is also an interest and focus in Tokarczuk's writing. I would like to also say hello to all my friends who came here, and especially Alicja, who is sitting here, and she is a friend of Olga. She also has been working with her, so if there would be questions, I would also suggest to discuss with Alicja. Olga Tokarczuk, The Maps of Reality. For her narrative imagination that with encyclopedic passion represents the crossing of boundaries as a form of life. That was the dedication for the explanation for the Nobel Prize. When the news about this year's Nobel Prize in Literature was announced, Poland was a week before the parliamentary elections. The political situation has been very tense for the last couple of years. The split between the conservative and the liberal camps is increasing. The political tension has been expressed in excessive emotional vocabulary, manifestations, and political actions. The Polish society is facing a deepening breakage. When Olga Tokarczuk, one of the most successful Polish writers, a Polish activist, leftist, vegetarian, and a feminist, won a Nobel Prize for the inner conflicted nation, it was a moment of surprise and consternation. Tokarczuk won. Since the award was announced, Poles have been celebrating Olga Tokarczuk jointly, welcoming the 19th Nobel Prize, the fourth one in literature. Olga Tokarczuk was born in 1962 in Sulechów, near Zielona Góra, in western Poland. She trained as a psychologist in Warsaw. In the mid-80s, she moved to southwest of Poland to Wrocław and later to Wałbrzych, where she practiced as a therapist. Lower Silesia, southwest region that only became part of Poland after the Second World War, is a very important location in her writing. Her debut book was a collection of poems, City in the Mirrors, published in 1989. Though she was never satisfied with her poetry and her writing, success was built on the prose writing. About the change of her profession, Tokarczuk said, I think the source of writing and helping people as a therapist was the same, in fact. It was listening to somebody's stories, trying to communicate with the other one, finding a perfect communication with another human being. I think I'm too neurotic to be a therapist. The endless story of how we cannot manage with ourselves, we cannot find a way of communication with others. The world is sometimes too heavy for our fragile shoulders. It was too much for me. Then I've decided to quit my job, change my profession. I spent 1 year traveling and I came back with a book, my first book. Her first novel was published in 1993, The Journey of Book People. It was a literary success, and since then, for the next 30 years, Tokarczuk will publish a book every other year, winning Nike, one of the most prestigious awards for Polish literature, 2 times in the main category, the Jury Award, for the books of Jacob and Flights, as well as 5 times the Audience Award. In 2018, she won the International Booker Prize for her novel Flights. Tokarczuk is a popular writer in Poland, though some readers find her narration style long-winded and tiresome, her philosophical ambitions hard to understand. Tokarczuk's writing and her public statements have been controversial to the conservative and Catholic intellectual circles in Poland. Tokarczuk opposes the patriarchal society, questioning the existing laws, narrations, and morality. The variety of subjects she chooses is exceptional. Her successful debut novel, The Journey of the Book People, is a parable set in the 17th century France and Spain, a search for a mythical book, a metaphor of search for happiness and sense of life. Her second novel, E.E., which is the initials of the main character, follows the story of Erna Elzner, a young girl living in the beginning of the 20th century in eastern Germany in Breslau, a city that will become Polish in 1945. The girl develops psychic abilities while entering her puberty. In her third novel, Primeval and Other Times, a mythical and poetic saga, we follow the two families in the period between the First World War and late 80s, their life in an imaginary village, archetypical microcosm in the middle of Poland. This book is widely considered the top achievement in recent Polish mythographical prose. Her next book, The Wardrobe, was a collection of 3 novella-type stories representing the paths of Tokarczuk's creativity, identity, and existential problems. One of the stories, Numbers, which was her first published short story, is a meditation on elusiveness of human life accommodated in a hotel room, now could be read as a harbinger of Tokarczuk's reflections on traveling, concluded later in her bestseller Flights. The fourth novel, House of Day, House of Night, is a mosaic of little forms, essays, private notes, stories, and drafts. The most personal book of Tokarczuk, inspired by a village in Sudety Mountains on the Polish and Czech border, where the author moved in 1994. It was the first book published online in the year 2000, and it marks a beginning of e-books in Poland. The next book, Playing Many Drums, is a collection of 19 short stories divided into 3 parts. An analysis of literary and non-literary creation, the stories inspired by a historical research, and realistic stories based on the author's observations. The next published was an essay, The Doll and the Pearl, which proposed a new reading of Bolesław Prus's late 19th century novel Lalka, considered a masterpiece of Polish literature. In 2004, Tokarczuk publishes her third short story collection, Latest Stories, 3 short forms, 3 women, 3 generations, 3 different ways of dealing with death. In the 10th published book and her 5th novel, Anna in the Catacombs, Tokarczuk rewrites Sumerian myth, placing it in a futuristic city. The story of an ancient goddess, Inanna, and her descent into and return from the underworld was an inspiration to create a powerful female character who breaks the prevailing rules. In 2007, Tokarczuk publishes her bestseller Flights, a mosaic of fiction and essay writing, a meditation on traveling, moving between places, discovering new and ancient paths. Philosophical descriptions of modern airports, meetings on the plane and in hotels are the stopovers between the longer narration blocks. The book presents a glimpse into the moments of the history of the anatomy, development of the methods of preservation of human tissues and organs for scientific research. There is a story of a wife of an elderly professor lecturing during the cruise ship trips in Greece. Bordering on madness, dramatic experience of a man who lost his wife and his child during holidays in Croatia. All stories creating a world without borders, fragmental reality of human existence. After The Flights, her big philosophical work, Tokarczuk chose a lighter genre. In 2009, she published an eco-thriller, Drive Your Plow Through the Bones of the Dead, an environmentalist statement dressed in a crime fiction built on a motif of suspense. A thriller set in a village in the Polish mountains tells a story of an elderly woman observing the mysterious murders made on hunters in her small community. In 2012, Tokarczuk publishes The Bear's Moment, a collection of articles, essays, and humorous narratives which together create her political manifesto. For Tokarczuk, one can never separate literature from politics. In 2014, Tokarczuk publishes The Books of Jacob, over 900 pages long. A story set in the 18th century follows the life of a historical figure, a Jew named Jacob Frank. A religious leader, merchant, Kabbalist, Sabbatarian rabbi, tzaddik, mystic, philosopher, socio-political activist, religious reformer, self-proclaimed prophet, astrologer, and alchemist. It took 8 years of a deep historical research, travels, and an obsession to write this book. Bizarre Stories, published in 2018, is her 4th collection of short stories and the latest publication of Tokarczuk's writing. 10 different locations: Asia, modern Switzerland, historical east border of Polish kingdom, and many imaginary places. 10 different moments in human history. Through the fragmentary forms, mosaic structure, historical inspirations, and philosophical meditation on human reality, Tokarczuk offers the quintessence of her style. Tokarczuk underlines that she is not a historian, yet many of her stories are based on historical research, facts, and real figures. In her own words as a writer, she is building simple stone bridges, setting the history facts as steps to enable crossing a river, leaving space between the stones for her own imagination. In her stories, she travels through time and space, visiting a study of Philip Verheyen, a Flemish surgeon and anatomist from the 17th century, who conceptualized the phenomenon of phantom pain based on his own medical condition after the amputation of his left leg. Tokarczuk also rewrote pleading letters of a daughter of Angelo Soliman, the 18th century Austrian black Freemason who after his death was skinned, stuffed, and made into an exhibit within a cabinet of curiosities of the Imperial Natural History Collection. Although Angelo Soliman was highly respected in the intellectual circles of Vienna and counted as a valued friend by Austrian Emperor Joseph II, after his death, instead of receiving a Christian burial, he became a specimen of the African race, his body exhibited alongside stuffed animals in the museum. Tokarczuk presents also an adventure of William Davidson, a Scottish doctor and scientist from 17th century who became physician at the court of Polish king Jan Kazimierz, and who while traveling through Poland was introduced to existence of so-called green children, mythical wild kids whose skin had a green shade, as well as the Polish plat, a medical hair condition that was believed to have supernatural abilities. Myths, spiritualism, magic, and religious beliefs play a special role in Tokarczuk's stories. Taking little pieces of factual history, she creates myths, histories steeped in their own order, in which every event, good or bad, has an explanation. In Tokarczuk's stories, the characters need to deal with the duality of life. They live between the real, factual, rational reality and the oniric state, intuitive and unconscious world, symbolic sphere. The spirituality and magic become a narration tool. Is the 15 years old Erna Etzler really a medium with psychic abilities, or is she just entering her puberty with all the hormonal changes and intellectual shifts? Is she a medium, or is she a product of the interest of her neurotic mother, a form of unconscious expression of female energy oppressed by rules and conventions of the early 20th century etiquette? Which of those explanations seems to be more disturbing, the one referring to magic, or the one to the rational yet brutal reality? Tokarczuk seems to ask the reader. There is no right answer to the complexity of the human existence. Tokarczuk characters are questioning the nature and purpose of human life. Her protagonists are struggling with reality, historical and political landscapes they live in. Religion, science, and spirituality enable them to understand their position in the world, open new doors in the little space they are locked in. Her characters look for laws and rules, moral, scientific, spiritual, or natural, laws that could bring them closer to a solution, rules that could make their existence more bearable. Through it, Tokarczuk's style is a marriage of magical realism and naturalism. A quote, "Development of civilization made our societies dehumanized, mythologized, craving for magic, myths, symbols which make people's life fuller and more intense." Unquote. Intertextuality of Tokarczuk's books deserves recognition. The chapters of the eco-thriller Drive Your Plow Through the Bones of the Dead start with passages by William Blake. The title of the book is a quote from one of his poems. In The Journey of the Book People, the travel tale refers directly to the Ulysses story. The motif of Ulysses' travels appears also in her novel Flights. In the same book, she mentions Moby Dick by Herman Melville. In the story of Eric, an alcoholic sailor who learned English while reading Moby Dick in prison. He is a loner, increasingly agitated with the daily routine of his post-jail life as a ferry conductor, and he begins to harbor homicidal fantasies of taking others with him into death. Another book, Anna in the Catacombs, is a revisited and rewritten ancient myth. Tokarczuk analyzes existing narratives, finds their weak points, and uses them as a starting point for her own writing. Noticing the absence of women in the written history, she rewrites it, portraying women in their less conventional roles. Books of Olga Tokarczuk are full with strong female protagonists, independent, mature, driven heroines instead of the romantic and family-focused bleached female characters. Tokarczuk's women explore the secrets of life, physical pleasure, transcend their abilities, assigned roles, they take a risk and break the laws. And they are not being punished for it. In the eco-thriller, Drive Your Plow Through the Bones of the Dead, Janina Duszejko, an English teacher and a winter caretaker for a few summer houses in an isolated forest community, is witnessing a series of mysterious deaths. Hunters, including a priest, the protagonist's neighbor, and other members of the local patriarchal elite, die punished on behalf of the nature. Janina Duszejko, an elderly woman, astrologist, an eccentric loner, is a fighter. She opposes the existing laws, breaks them, and yet she is not being punished. A similar fate meets Anna In, a protagonist inspired by ancient goddess Inanna. Anna In enters the world of the dead to meet her sister. According to the law, she can never return to the world of living, what confirmed the fathers, the male gods. Yet, thanks to her female friend and the support of her mother goddess, Anna finds a way to come back to life. The existing patriarchal rules are being questioned, challenged, and finally changed. The pages of Tokarczuk stories are inhabited by older eccentric women. Marta from the House of Day, House of Night, seemed to be a seat for the character of Janina Duszejko. Intuition, instinct, and passion, the female protagonists share the understanding of life. They carry a secret, transcend the roles assigned to them. In Tokarczuk's writing, women and nature are very close. Tokarczuk's feministic perspective goes together with the environmental worries. The established rules and God-given rights abuse women just as they abuse the environment. The interest in the environmental issues of Olga Tokarczuk is based on a deep philosophical belief that the distinction between people and nature is a human concept. Quote, Why would we assume, asks the writer, that the gap between human and the world is more important than the gap between two other types of being? Why distinction between you and a tree is far more important than the distinction between the same tree and a bird? Unquote. She opposes the Catholic beliefs that only humans have a soul. In her books, Tokarczuk pushes the human ego to the background. She melts it with nature, a force far more powerful and wiser than the people, little and weak beings struggling to understand the purpose of their existence, struggling with themselves and with the world. Quote, People think they live more intensely than animals, than plants, and especially than things. Animals sense that they live more intensely than plants and things. Plants dream that they live more intensely than things. But things last, and this lasting is more alive than anything else. Unquote. Her style is characterized by fragmentary structures, a cacophony of voices and stories, sometimes unconnected across time and space. The celebration of the ordinary, and the mystery of the ordinary. Slow pace of narration, naturalistic descriptions of people, places, landscapes. Tokarczuk asks the reader to slow down, to pay attention, to observe. Her writing is a plea for meaningful connectedness. I titled my talk, The Maps of Reality. Olgu Tokarczuk says, quote, "Reality is something that we can perceive from many points of view, and this is the very first definition of literature for me." So once again, reality is something that we can perceive from many points of view, unquote. End quote. I'm deeply convinced that a puzzle is missing to put the whole world together, and this puzzle is not yet visible, and all available puzzles do not match. That's what my books are about, unquote. Quote. There is a beautiful Jewish metaphorical parable saying that the number of chambers in the palace of God is infinite, and in no way they can all be visited. Does it mean, however, that we should give up on exploring the palace of God at all? If you can't comprehend everything, should you give up on the smallest particles? There is a lot of questions, and the best space for asking and seeking answers seems to be literature, because it is a certain game with the world, and the world itself is a certain game, open, unclear, with changing rules. It seems to me that there is nothing permanent. We constantly invent and create images, meanings, individually and collectively. The result of this collective creation is called reality, unquote. Olgu Tokarczuk is on a quest visiting chambers of the God's palace. She visits the past and the future, the possible past and possible future. She draws maps for us. The literature is a form of knowledge. Analyzing the existing narratives, she traces the truth and the falsehood. She looks for alternative. She takes on a task to rewrite the narratives, to draw new, more actual maps. She finds the weak points of the political and social landscapes in the present and in the past centuries and uses them as an inspiration for her writing. She doesn't insist that her maps are perfect. No, her writing is fragmentary, mosaic. There is plenty of empty space, unknown territories. She offers a constellation of orientation points instead of detailed maps. The free space in between invites us to explore, enable us to change and to move. In Flights, there is a monologue of a homeless woman, a nomad, a wanderer, which I would like to quote at the end of my talk. I think it offers to meet Tokarczuk as a writer and activist. Quote, "Whoever pauses will be petrified. Whoever stops, pinned like an insect, his heart pierced by a wooden needle, his hands and feet drilled through and pinned into the threshold and the ceiling. This is why tyrants of all stripes, infernal servants, have such a deep-seated hatred for the nomads. This is why they persecute the gypsies and the Jews, and why they force all free people to settle, assigning the address that serves as our sentence." Thank you.